I'm Samantha Williams, 28 years old. I guess you could say I'm just an ordinary woman with an ordinary life. I'm not famous, and I don't have any extraordinary accomplishments to my name. I'm not someone who stands out in a crowd, but I have always believed in love, in family, in the idea of finding someone who would stand by me through thick and thin. I used to think I had everything figured out, until I said something that changed everything. It all started with a joke. It was a casual evening with friends, and we were having a laugh, talking about relationships and life. I had recently married my husband, Daniel, and as the conversation moved towards our love story, I couldn't resist a little playful comment. I turned to the group, smiling, and said, "You know, Daniel's biggest achievement is marrying me." It wasn't meant to be taken seriously. I was proud of my marriage, proud of the life we were building together. It was supposed to be funny, light-hearted, a bit of a self-deprecating joke about how I had somehow snagged such a great guy. Everyone laughed. They thought it was cute. But deep down, I didn't realize the weight of my words. I didn't see how something so simple could carry so much meaning. I didn't think it would have any consequences at all. I thought Daniel would laugh it off too, but when I looked at his face, I could see something different. It wasn't the reaction I expected. It was like I had said something that cracked open a part of him I didn't understand. He smiled, sure, but it didn't reach his eyes. And that bothered me. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a momentary thing. The evening continued, and we all went our separate ways, but something felt different when I got home. Daniel was quieter than usual, distant, as though he was lost in his own thoughts. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just tired, maybe it was nothing. But I noticed the way he avoided eye contact, the way he sighed when I asked about his day. There was an unspoken tension in the air, something that I couldn't put my finger on. The next few days were the same. He seemed withdrawn, and every time I tried to talk to him, there was an edge to his responses. I began to question myself, was I being too demanding? Was I being selfish? But then it hit me, that joke. That stupid joke I had made. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how careless I had been. I had made light of our relationship in front of people we both cared about, and I hadn't even considered how it might affect him. The problem was, I never expected it to be a big deal. I didn't expect it to matter to him. But somehow, it did. And I couldn't take it back. What was supposed to be a harmless comment had somehow planted a seed of insecurity in his mind, and now everything between us felt off. I hadn't meant to hurt him, but in that one careless moment, I had. And now, I had no idea how to fix it. The tension between Daniel and me grew over the next few weeks. At first, it was subtle, small changes in the way he spoke to me, little glances he would throw my way when he thought I wasn't looking. But it didn't take long for me to notice that things weren't the same. It was as though the comment I made had opened a door, one that I couldn't close again. I had joked about how his biggest achievement was marrying me, but now it seemed like every word I said, every action I took, was somehow being scrutinized. I didn't want to believe it at first. I kept thinking I was overthinking things, that I was just being paranoid. But as the days passed, I realized it wasn't just in my head. There was something different in him, something distant. He became more reserved, less affectionate. His warm hugs turned into quick, distracted embraces, and his smiles felt forced. He wasn't the same man I had married. One evening, after dinner, I tried to start a conversation. I thought maybe we could talk things through, get back to the way things were before I made that stupid joke. "Daniel," I began, trying to keep my tone light, "we haven't really talked much lately. Is everything okay?" He looked at me for a moment, his eyes betraying a mix of frustration and sadness. He didn't answer right away, and I could feel the silence thickening between us. I tried to fill it, to smooth things over. "I know I've been a little distracted lately, but I really miss us. We used to talk about everything." He didn't respond immediately, and that silence spoke louder than anything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he sighed deeply. "Do you really think you're better than me, he asked, his voice quiet but edged with hurt. I froze. That wasn't the question I was expecting. What do you mean? I asked, trying to understand, but inside, a wave of guilt and confusion washed over me. Ever since that night, when you made that joke about me, things haven't been the same. It's like you're looking down on me, like I'm not enough for you anymore. Like marrying me was the biggest thing I could ever do. His words were sharp, cutting into me in a way I hadn't anticipated. I tried to explain. Daniel, I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to make everyone laugh. You know I'm proud of you, of us, of our life together. But he didn't seem convinced. It's not just the joke, Samantha. It's how you treat me now. You're always busy with your own things, and I feel like I'm just an afterthought. Like I'm not important. The words stung more than I cared to admit. I had always been so focused on my own ambitions, on making sure everything was perfect, that I hadn't noticed how much I was neglecting him. It wasn't intentional, but it was real. I hadn't realized how much I had started taking him for granted. He continued, his voice tinged with frustration, you don't see it, do you? I'm not the man I was before. And it's not just the joke anymore, it's everything. I don't feel like I'm enough for you. My heart sank. I had never wanted to make him feel this way, but now it seemed like I had pushed him to a place where he couldn't see past the hurt. I had made a mistake, a small one at first, but it had grown into something far bigger than I could have ever imagined. The distance between us wasn't just in the way we spoke to each other anymore, it was in the way we looked at each other. And all I could do was stand there, feeling the weight of everything I had lost in a few careless words. I spent days replaying that conversation in my mind, trying to figure out how to fix what I had broken. I realized that what Daniel needed was not just an apology, it was understanding, reassurance, and a commitment from me that I hadn't given him in a long time. But how could I offer him that when I wasn't even sure what had gone wrong? I could see the cracks in our relationship, but I didn't know how to mend them. I had been so focused on myself, on my work, on everything else that I had stopped noticing the quiet hurt building up in him. The man who had once been my rock, the one who held me close when I needed it, was now a shadow of himself. And it was my fault. That evening, I decided to do something I had been avoiding for weeks, take a step back and really look at us. I prepared dinner like I always did, trying to make the evening feel normal, but everything felt off. The silence between us felt heavy, suffocating. He didn't ask about my day. I didn't ask about his. We ate in silence, and when I finally spoke, my voice felt foreign. Daniel, I said softly, my voice almost trembling, I've been thinking about what you said. About how I've been treating you. And I want to fix this. I know I've messed up, and I'm sorry. But I need you to know that I love you. I always have. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on his plate. My heart tightened in my chest, but I couldn't let this moment pass. I needed him to understand. I've been so focused on my own stuff, on what I think is important, that I haven't been giving you what you need. I've been blind to how you've been feeling, and I hate that I've made you feel like you're not enough. Because you are. You're everything to me. You always have been. His eyes flickered up to meet mine, but his expression was still guarded. I could see the hurt still lingering there, the disbelief in his eyes. But he didn't say anything. He didn't interrupt. And that silence, for once, didn't feel like a wall, it felt like a chance. A chance for me to make things right. I reached across the table and took his hand, the way I used to when I needed to feel close to him. Daniel, I need you to know that I don't take you for granted. And I'm sorry for making you feel that way. You're not just a part of my life. You're my life. You always will be. The tension between us didn't disappear instantly, and I knew it wouldn't. It wasn't something that could be fixed with a few words. But as I held his hand, as I looked into his eyes, I saw something there, a glimmer of hope, a crack in the armor he had built around himself. For the first time in a long while, it felt like we were both seeing each other again. And I realized then that it wasn't just about the joke I had made. It wasn't just about a mistake. It was about the little things, the small ways we had been drifting apart without even realizing it. I don't know how to fix everything, Daniel, I whispered, but I want to try. I want to be the wife you deserve. He squeezed my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of relief, a sense of connection that we had been missing. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But at least now, we had started the journey of finding our way back to each other. The days following that conversation felt like a slow rebuilding process. Daniel was still cautious, still hurt, but there was a small shift in him, a glimmer of the man I had fallen in love with. It wasn't immediate, and it wasn't perfect, but it was something. I knew I had to be patient, that fixing the cracks in our relationship would take time. But as we began to talk more openly, I started to realize how much I had neglected the small, everyday moments that made us who we were. I took extra care to show him that I was there for him, not just in the big gestures, but in the little things that mattered most. I started making time for him in my busy schedule, setting aside the endless work and distractions that had always been my priority. I cooked his favorite meals again, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. I wanted him to feel seen, to feel loved. One evening, after a long day, I found him sitting in the living room, looking through old photos. He didn't notice me standing in the doorway at first, and I watched as his fingers lingered over a picture of us from our honeymoon, a time when everything felt so easy, so full of promise. He had a small, sad smile on his face when he noticed me standing there. "You remember this?" he asked, holding up the photo. It was one of our first big adventures together, before the weight of daily life had started to chip away at our bond. We looked so happy, so carefree. It was hard to believe that just months ago, we had almost lost each other. "I remember everything," I said softly, walking over to him. "I remember how much we laughed, how we made all these plans about our future. I remember how easy it was to love you then." He looked up at me, the sadness in his eyes still present but now mixed with something else. "I miss that," he said quietly. "I miss us. I miss who we were before everything got so complicated." "I miss that too," I whispered, sitting beside him. "But I don't want to lose us. I don't want to be the person who lets everything slip away." He nodded, and for the first time in a while, we just sat there in silence, letting the weight of our shared memories sink in. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was real, and in that moment, I knew that we were starting to find our way back to each other. Slowly, but surely. The days that followed were filled with small, meaningful steps. We went on walks together again, talked about our dreams and our fears, just like we used to. We laughed, not as a way to cover up the tension, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The connection we had once shared, though fragile, was beginning to heal. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the old wounds resurfaced. But there was something different now. We were both committed to the process, to the idea that love wasn't just about the good times, but also about working through the hard ones together. And as I looked at Daniel one evening, his hand holding mine once more, I realized that this rebuilding, this effort to understand each other again, was where the real strength of our relationship lay. We weren't perfect, but we were willing to try, and that made all the difference. A few weeks later, I found myself standing in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee, thinking about everything we had been through. The weight of the past few months had been heavy, but it also made me realize how much I had taken for granted. Daniel and I had been through a lot, and even though we had worked hard to rebuild what had been broken, I still felt this lingering fear. The fear that something would happen again, that somehow, I would slip up and lose him. It was one of those mornings when everything felt normal, yet everything was still different. The house was quiet, but not in a way that felt empty. It felt like a calm before a storm that wasn't coming. Daniel was in the other room, doing something on his laptop. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I had to let go of the lingering anxiety that had built up over the last few weeks. The fear of making the same mistake again was suffocating me. And if there was one thing I had learned, it was that holding on to fear only pushed people away. I walked into the living room where Daniel sat, his back to me as he worked. I cleared my throat, and he turned around with a small smile. There was still a quiet distance between us, but it felt more like a space that allowed us to breathe rather than something that kept us apart. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "can we talk?" He raised an eyebrow, his smile fading just slightly, but he nodded. "Of course." I took a seat next to him, my heart pounding. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us. And I know I said this before, but I need you to know that I don't take you for granted. I'm sorry for the things I've said and done. The way I made you feel like you weren't enough." Daniel's eyes softened as I spoke, but I could tell he was still processing everything. "Samantha, you don't need to keep apologizing," he said quietly. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I know, but I still did. And I need you to understand that I never want to make you feel small or insignificant again. I love you, Daniel. I don't ever want to make the mistake of not showing you that." He was quiet for a moment, looking down at his hands before meeting my gaze. "I know you love me, Samantha. And I'm sorry too. I've been closed off, and I've let my pride get in the way of us. I was hurt, and I didn't know how to fix it." I took a deep breath, relieved that he wasn't pulling away. "We've both made mistakes. But I don't want to let fear or pride control us anymore. I want us to move forward. Together." Daniel nodded slowly, his hand reaching for mine. "I want that too." We sat there in silence for a while, just holding hands. The weight of everything that had happened between us was still there, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was a reminder of how far we had come. We had both grown, learned, and were ready to move forward, even if we didn't have all the answers yet. In that moment, I realized that love wasn't just about the good times or even about the mistakes. It was about the willingness to fight for each other, to face the hard times together, and to always keep trying, no matter how many times we stumbled. I looked at Daniel and smiled. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" He smiled back, his eyes warm with something I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yeah, we are." Subscribe to our channel for powerful real stories that touch your heart. Join a community where emotions run deep and every story brings a new perspective. Don't miss out, hit that bell for weekly updates.